the tackle, and today we are having economists. We're going to debunk. We said we are debunking the economics. We are debunking the economics with the best brains in town. We have KWAME OWINO, CEO, Institute of Economics, I hear, and also you also have BILLOW KERROW, was a former shadow finance minister in Kanu's ile serikali ilipita ya mpito, and he was also a senator Marendera County. Alituambia aliretire kwa siasa, sasa atatuambia kuona alitoroka siasa aenda afanye uchumi. Thanks again to our sponsors, Maridadi Motors. Bale Maridadi Motors on Thika Road, opposite Total Ridgeways. You can get the best deals on your vehicles. It's also Maridadi Motors Sacco, where you get to save 50% of the value of the car that you wish to import, and you pay the rest as you do what? As you continue driving your vehicle. There's also import to sell. Maridadi gives you an opportunity to invest, where you import a car to sell. They import it for you, and the car is brought under your name. The logbook is under your name, so there's no issues of, oh, gari sijui ni ya nani iliendaje. Then they sell it, and then you give you a guaranteed returns of 15%, guaranteed minimum returns of 15% per annum. Alafu unachapa kazi hivyo. Kuna pia Maridadi Motor Sacco, where you get 50% and then you pay for the rest as you drive your car. Sparkling motor shower at Ridgeways, that is at Siata Mall. Pale nyuma unaenda pale spa, unaoshawa gari. Kufika pale usema umetumwa na Bitoko, unapata 20% discount. Go to D-Square in Eldoret, Ketia building, third floor. Thank you so much for always dressing us. Kama unataka nguo ama unataka kungara zaidi, kimbia pale D-Square Eldoret tuweze kupata kazi. If you also wish to advertise on the taco, you can always talk to us. Share your number on our inbox and someone will contact you from Trio Media. Good to see you guys. David Muturi anasema Dubai tumeingia. Good to see you. Evajep Kemai, Mheshimiwa Elgeyo Marakwet. Good to see you. Evajep Kemai, it's a pleasure to have you. Pedi Kapope tuned in from Mlolongo. Asante sana to Mlolongo. Mburugu Kinyanya tuning in from Diaspora. Rongai, good morning. Good morning to you. Hali Gulaid, good morning from Nakuru. Good to see you. Kiboy Yego anasema good morning to Tackle, watching from Mongata. Rongai tuko tuned in kabisa. Mohamed Abdullah Habdi, good morning from Isiolo. Great Tackle expected. Asante sana. Nixon Nairobi niko ndani kabisa. Mandela Nyoko, keep soaring brother Bitoko. Asante sana, good to see you. William Mwangi anasema good morning team, pamoja sana. Kina Kashigi Cyrus juu mko wapi? Kama watu wa CBD pia, I hope you guys are up. Watu wa pale Mandera Northeast and all the guys from the Northeastern frontier, it's good to see you guys. Keep coming, keep coming. We'll keep giving the shout outs. Lakini kabla sijaendelea sana na salamu, endeleeni kutuma. Wacha nikimbie kidogo nsalimia wageni, alafu tunarudi. Kwame, good morning sir.
Good morning, how are you?
Good to see you.
Nice to see you, thank you.
It is your first time on the tackle.
Yes, it is. Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
Finally, glad to be here. I hope you're going to have an exciting discourse. Hata mimi ni mkarabati tu wa uchumi, lakini I'll try as much as possible to engage you. Mheshimiwa BILLOW KERROW, how are you, sir?
Good morning, yes.
Good to see you.
Good to see you, sir.
It's also your first time on the tackle.
Yep.
Nashukuru sana kukuona. So, ulisema ulitoroka siasa kwa nini baba? Kabla hata tujaenda mambo ya uchumi. Everyone is trying to get into politics and you're running away.
Well, that's the problem. It's getting crowded.
That is why you ran away.
Yeah, I think politics is not everyone's get along. It's not easy. So I've been there 15 years, but I think I can do. You can contribute to the country's economy like they do always, or to the country in many ways than being in politics. And I think I think you know, you when you look at Kenyan politics, sometimes you feel it's not worth really the hassle, because of the way, you know, our governments are, you know, the way the public, you know, interests always doesn't match with what as
the political
want
interest
to do, or the political or what the government wants. So there's always a lot of difficulty. So I thought it's better that I do other things after 15 years.
You're saying it's crowded. It's about to get worse. Understand now? You're going to have a
triple, now it's
decker.
Politics is now employment. So everyone wants to get into it, whether it's at county assembly level or at national level. It's about jobs. It's about money. It's about resources. It's not just about leadership. Yeah.
All right. I want to give you an opportunity, Mr. Kome, to introduce yourself as well, because I know there are a number of tacklers who might not be knowing you. Some other people, you know, they somehow mistake with you with another brother. I didn't know you have another brother who looks like you. Okay. So a lot of people were asking me yesterday, which Kome, all right.
Okay. Thanks a lot. I'm Kwame OWINO. I work at the Institute of Economic Affairs. And yes, I have a brother who's a lawyer, but the guy who's here is a student of economics. So, yeah, he's my twin brother.
Different guys cut from the same material.
Yes.
Quite interesting. I hope we're going to look at majorly the issues that have been in the economics of EAC and also within the country. And, there are a lot of people ask questions when it comes to an economy. People would wonder, okay, when they say, what is an economy? Many people think money majorly, but I think I could not be an economist, but I think there's a wider spectrum of economics, because every single thing, whether you are a farmer in the farm, you're still contributing to the economics of the country. But you'll help me more on that. So I think we're going to get straight to Jobo. Yeah? The other day, where the president has been appointed as chairman of the ESC, the people were so excited that I was saying, well, Rais finally amepewa kakiti kubwa. And then others were pouring the cold water on them and telling them, no, these are rotational seats. And even amid all this excitement and pouring of cold water on the same thing, what does it really mean? What is being a chairman of the ESC, and what does it portend for the country? I'll start with you, Kwame.
Okay. Well, you're right that this is a rotational seat in the sense that he's a chair of the summit. Mm-hmm. So basically the summit is that meeting of the presidents who are member of the member countries of the East Africa community. And the East Africa community, it's an important seat because the East Africa community is Kenya's most, it's our closest, but also actually one of the most successful regional economic blocs on the continent. And if you know, the trade arrangements between the East African countries is important for Kenya, both in terms of sources for exports, but also the imports into the country. So it's a good trade arrangement. So the president's view, the president's opportunity, taking the role of or as chair of the summit, means to some extent he should be able to use his diplomatic capability to speak to his brothers, not a sister yet, his peers in the ESC, and to bring them to agree to some common rules to continue to implement. So in a way he can control the agenda, and also being a chair means that I think he'll be under test because the ESC has had some problems with coordination among the presidents for a while. So obviously it's also a challenge. And being that Kenya is not necessarily the bigger brother, but Kenya has a slightly larger economy. I think it's his responsibilities about striking confidence in his colleagues, but also giving people the impression that the ESC is still going to perform an important role in the region is an important one. So yes, it rotates. I think after 1 year it will go somewhere else, but the very idea that the president has had a chance now means he'll be under the spotlight to actually continue to let the lights of the ESC shine on the continent and probably abroad as well. So it's a good opportunity.
So is it given to a country or it's given to an individual?
Well, it's a country.
What happens if today we do an election?
It can only be a president.
So what happens today if we do an election and then we have a new president?
Well, the Kenyan president.
The new president proceeds with the same position.
Yes,
right. So it's not about Uhuru Kenyatta, it's about a country.
Yes, of course, but because he's the president, then yes, it's about
What are your thoughts, Mr. Miller?
No, I agree with what Kwame said, I share the optimism. East African countries are the largest, I think some of the largest economic or trading partners with Kenya really in the region. And I think it gives Kenya the opportunity to increase its trade with these countries. If it's really about taking advantage of the opportunities, Kenya to try and leverage its position now as the chair, to try and increase its trade and to try and look for some of the. I'll tell you some of the things. For example, on tax, the East African countries have for a long time been trying to have uniform taxation policies. It's something that they have succeeded in many ways. And, generally the regional integration, not just on the economic terms, but I think even politically has been something that has been on the cards for a very long time. And I think in general, the President Uhuru had done pretty well in regional or, Africa or this, that level. He seems to do pretty well, than he does at home. So I think it's a good thing that he's
trying to suggest something that he's not doing much at all.
I think that it's a good opportunity for him to try and push the country's economic agenda in the region. I think that should be his main issue. Today, Kenyans are more concerned about the economy really than the political aspect.
So what do you think we stand to benefit is a more leverage within the EAC, more leverage in terms of economic negotiations within the EAC? And we'll come to that. The unity of EAC continues to be quite elusive. Every time we talk about EAC, the time we're talking about forming a common currency, that you're having a conversation about common market customs and all that. But there seems to be a push and pull within countries. And you can see that for the longest time, Kenya and Uganda had a very close relationship. That seems to be shifting towards Tanzania and all that. Kenya and Tanzania seem to be enjoying an on and off bromance. You've already mentioned that you don't have a sister yet, so you can almost say bromance. So there seems to be a serious disconnect within the EAC countries. Burundi and Rwanda are also having a conflict and all that. And then, within the EAC, you find that there's a lot of strained relationships. As much as they try to remain as cordial as possible, it seems like it's very difficult to bring the EAC. But again, when you look back at the times of Moi, there seems to have been a more united EAC. I don't know what was uniting them. But even as we talk about doing all these things, uniting the EAC, ensuring that we have probably a borderless transaction in terms of business and free trade in between, how do we achieve this with countries which are always in a tough? The other day, Tanzania walichoma vifaranga yetu pale at the border. The other when you had also COVID, there was a lot of conflicts, push and pull within the borders. How do we achieve this with such conflicts within the EAC?
Well, okay, first, you mentioned President Moi's. I think, yes, when President Moi was president, was in the leadership, there were only 3 members of the EAC. Since then, of course, the EAC has scaled up. So right now we have Rwanda, Burundi, South Sudan. There's an application by Ethiopia and another one by Somalia, which was discussed as the president took up new leadership. So I think the more members you have, and that's the reason EAC is important, in order for there to be a rules-based system for some of those issues to be resolved. I think as well that the EAC has played, not perfect, but a good role in making sure that Burundi, for instance, does not completely unravel. Because we also EAC countries also live in a dangerous neighborhood. There are conflicts and there are kinds of tensions across borders and within. So that's one of the things. But the function, let's talk about the economic side. The function of the EAC is to make sure that to the extent that is possible, Kenyan businessmen and Kenyan people can trade as much as possible across with very little friction in terms of tariffs, in terms of barriers and all that. And that the EAC has done a good job, and in some cases it's a mixed job, because there's what is called the common, the common market, which obviously should have been implemented by 2010, and of course it's been suspended. But it's difficult globally even. Most of these things are difficult to resolve permanently because new issues arise. So the EAC has not done too badly. In fact, if you think about it in the continent, building the other blocks, as we started with this statement, the EAC is a shining example for the rest of the continent in terms of what it has done. So in that kind of...
It's not state, it's still a shining example.
It is. It's a shining example. So that's one. I think that the two things that the EAC must not do, there's nothing in economics that states that countries must open up trade, must have liberal markets, and also have the same currency. I don't think going for the same currency is necessarily a good thing. The example of the EU shows always that one of the things you do when you have the same currencies, you constrain other countries in terms of the ability. So opening up movement of people, the possibility of investment across borders is a good one. But that doesn't have to result in one, a common currency. I don't think that's necessary. And the second one is political federation, because the political systems that people have are different. And even within countries, I think the constitutional arrangements are different. So talking about Kenya and Tanzania, again, I think that's what challenges our diplomats and the president. So you remember last year when there was the problem with COVID, I think the president made calls, spoke to his counterpart in Tanzania, and of course these things were resolved. So that's the reason these rules exist. So the mere fact that you have challenges within the EAC, in my view, is it's not a reason to be despair. It's actually to say that when problems such as those arise, then you go back to the rules and read what do the rules say we need to do. So those challenges are, it's just like having a constitution. When you have a constitution in Kenya, when a difficult moment arises, then we say, what does the Constitution tell us should be the path towards resolving it? So that's my view, is that we can't throw away the baby with the bathwater, or simply say that because we have some tensions here and there, that the EAC is not worth it. It's still a very good platform for building Kenya's economic diplomacy across the region.
All right, Mheshimiwa, with all these conflicts, what is the future of a common market and customs union? I mean, are these guys ever going to really, implement these protocols?
I think the future is good. The future is positive. First, what KWAME says, the most important thing is that this is a rules-based relationship or organization. It's about protocols that have been, that govern literally every aspect of whether it's trade or other relationships. And I think there are challenges, of course. It's not easy. For example, the free movement of people is always one of the challenges that the perception, whether real or, imagine that one country is more developed than the other and has more skilled workforce. And if you allow free movement of people, then, or free liberalization really on everything, then it's going to affect their country or so forth. These are realities that are there. But I think when you look at the fact that Africa itself, African Union, it is trying to go for the continent-wide free trade area, you get the perception that we are already on a good footing, because we've already started off as East African community. We have experiences in many ways, whether it's in politics, there is a East African parliament. In judiciary, we have the courts, East African court of there's a South African court, and so forth. So I think there's already a very good foundation that would help us to leverage on the continent when the free trade area across Africa starts from the economy. So I think it's a good thing, and it's not like I think the point he said very clear that these challenges are in everywhere. You remember in America. They had challenges, Mexico, Canada relationship. It happens in every, trading bloc. In EU, you have seen the UK exiting for one reason or the other, and the economic, challenges. So those challenges are there, but they always have to be addressed. I think it's a dynamic situation that has to continuously evolve because of the, the change in dynamics in each country, whether it's economics, whether it's politics, and so forth. So, but I think we've done pretty well, and I think the future is in that direction. It's about economic integration, and this is what the free trade area, that we're pursuing in Africa. So I think it's a good thing, and Kenya, as one of the economic powerhouses with a large industrial base, I think stands to gain more from this relationship, from this, kind of regional blocks than some of the other countries, not just in East Africa, but I think even in Africa. So I think it's a good thing that we need to encourage.
So you think it has a future? The common trade and customs union has a future. All right, that will be interesting to say. There's something Mheshimiwa has mentioned about Kenya being the big brother. The question is Kenya still a big brother? And what role can it play in at least trying to foster some good relationship between the EAC?
Okay. Yes, I mean, and by big brother, we don't necessarily mean that it's patronizing the rest. It's just that it has special responsibilities on account of the kind of economy it has and the diplomatic clout that it pulls. So I agree. And one of the things that Kenya needs to do is, as you said, that across the region, there are some fears sometimes that Kenya might, because of the first EAC, which ended in 1977 in not very good terms, and so some of those fears are still here. I think it's in Kenya's interest, as Senator Billow has mentioned, to give the rest of the region the confidence that, look, we are not trying to dominate anybody. Our interest is actually to open up, and we believe that a more open and liberalized trade within the EAC is a good way for us to build a foundation into the continental free trade area, and the possibility actually of even negotiating trade agreements as EAC with other parts of the world. That's definitely possible. So I think it's about Kenya's view, and that's why, in my view, President Uhuru Kenyatta's leadership now is going to show, because part of the things you've mentioned, like you said, banning chickens and blocking borders here and there every now and again, are sometimes a reflection of those fears. Now, we might be think that those fears are not founded on fact, but if people really feel afraid or concerned about the behavior of whether it's Kenyan businessmen or they simply just imagine that it might happen. That's what diplomacy is for. And I think if President Uhuru Kenyatta assures everybody that, look, our intention is not to, and you can't get away with it, yes, in the 21st century world, nobody can actually think that you can impose rules that people don't want on their borders. It will not work. The reason I have confidence in the East African community is, notwithstanding its many small creases that we see here and there, and some of them are big challenges. I mean, in the last 5 years alone, Somalia has applied to join. I think they should be. Ethiopia is interested, and South Sudan has been, and DRC, of course, also is in. So it's going to grow bigger and bigger. And the attraction is such that for all its own challenges, if you block on one side its challenges and achievements, I think compared to the fact that Ethiopia, DRC, for instance, even South Sudan had options to join others, and they decided for the EAC, tells you that for all its challenges, there's still it's still a very attractive proposition for countries on this side of the continent. So its future is bright.
It's also important to know that Somalia is also in a tussle with Kenya. You can pick it up.
The issue about concern, but it's not only about other countries being concerned about Kenya's. Kenya itself, there has been a lot of concern that this opening up would affect, the farmers and other businesses and so forth. You've seen Kenyans complaining, tomatoes coming from Uganda, eggs are coming in from where, Tanzania, a lot of vegetables are coming. So Kenyan farmers, raising a lot of. So it's everyone really that when you open up, then it works both ways. So you have to trade, and you have to allow others also to trade in your country.
You have to find a way to.
So it's something that will take time for people to like it says, it requires confidence building, and the government to really. What we need to avoid is what happens in some of the trading blocks, where you create unfavorable conditions, for example, by subsidies. You support yours, and so your products are more cheaper than the rest because of unfair practices. But I think generally it's a positive thing, and some of the protocols have actually been realized, and like the common external tariffs on taxes and so forth. The common passport, I've traveled with the East African passport to Rwanda, Tanzania. I mean, so I think there is quite a bit of success really on that front that we need to build on.
All right. So I think we all agree that now Kenya has a responsibility to make the others believe in its leadership and somehow foster a relationship between the other countries. Even Somalia applies, it's important to know that there's always a serious tussle between Kenya, Somaliland, and those other things. Ethiopia as well seems to be on the edge as much as it's trying to join in. Burundi, like you were saying, already having another tiff with Rwanda. So it will be interesting to see how it will unfold. There's something you've mentioned that you've gone there, and I would want to drop it back to you. Kenya, for the longest time, was seen to be a net producer. For the longest time, we used to produce more, and we used to export maize, export milk, export all the other things to other countries within the EAC. Now, Kenya is very quickly turning into a net importer. We're having where I come from Wasingishu, and we are farmers. There's been a lot of complaints in terms of maize that are coming in from Uganda at a very subsidized price, getting into the milling plants. You think about tomatoes and onions coming in from Tanzania, coming in cheaply, and you find that the Kenyan traders and farmers cannot really compete fairly. At what point do we become a net importer, and what effect does it have? Now, as you open up the economy, like you're saying, there seems to be a possibility of unfair competition, because when you find the cost of production for a bag of maize in Uganda, for instance, is lower, much lower than the cost of production in Kenya. So if you bring in that maize, then it means they cannot compete. They cannot actually compete with the local farm. We look at milk, for instance. There have been stories of you fungeni maziwa is counterfeit, but the thing is they're trying to make controls in terms of the milk market. What are the dangers that we run into as a country that has failed to spur production?
Of course, the danger is well known. We are going to lose our market. For a long time, Uganda, for instance, has been our largest trading partner. We have always exported more to Uganda than imports, but in recent years, you have seen that trend is reversing. And it's all about what you've said. It's about competitiveness. Our competitiveness has declined, and it's about the cost of production. It's the cost of energy in Kenya is very high. The cost of freight. Of course, not to leave out the cost of corruption, and so many things contribute to the high cost of production in this country. And so we've been losing out in competitiveness. And once you losing competitiveness, then those things come in. Otherwise, if you're competitive, your cost of production of maize it's lower, then there's no risk of others importing into the country. It's that simple. So when you find goods coming in here, basic goods, tomatoes and eggs and milk, and then it means you are not competitive anymore. There are inefficiencies of production. And for a long time. For example, our manufacturing sector has complained about really the high cost of production, particularly with regards to energy, for instance. And the government has, when this government came in 2013, one of the things they wanted to focus on was to lower the cost of production, the cost of energy, put up, more geothermal wells and try and make it. But still, if you are in manufacturing, like some of us, you'll find the cost of energy has not gone down, really. It's still, or in fact, more expensive than it was 10 years ago. The same thing, when SGR was mooted, the idea was to help reduce the cost of freight across the country. But today, nothing much has changed. It's in fact more expensive than what it was. So I think it's not just the infrastructure, but I think sometimes some of the policies of the government, some of the legal environment, legal frameworks and so forth. I think holistically the government needs to really address that. Otherwise, there's a risk, like you said, that we will lose our market. In the region, not just in the region, but even globally. Today, one of the most important areas in the last few years has been horticulture. But you've seen now, particularly in floriculture, many countries in the region, not only in the region, but across the world are getting into that industry. So slowly by slowly, you find Kenya losing ground, Ethiopia, countries are coming in. So I think unless we remain competitive, and then we will lose. We will lose the market, and this is what you alluded to here.
So, sir, but OWINO, how did we get here? How do we reverse it? And how do we balance between the consumer and the producer? Because the consumer is happy. Yeah. When tomatoes can come in cheaper, the consumer is happy. The producer is sad. How did we get here where we are finding it difficult to compete within our own markets? And then again, how do we reverse it? And how do we balance between the consumer and the producer?
Okay. The very reason that countries have going to into regional economic blocks, so like the EAC, is partly to exploit a bigger market. And what that means is that if we are Kenyans, we cannot therefore say that we will not buy anything from Uganda and Tanzania. We will simply export to them. That never works. It doesn't work. So while I sympathize with farmers in Western Gishu who produce maize, and if you're producing maize at 2,500 a bag, and it can be produced at 1,600 across the border, it's only a very, very, very wasteful person who would continue to buy expensive maize, because maize doesn't have a passport. So actually, even for businesses, I think it should be allowed for businesses to procure and to buy products. Because remember, while people say that there's maize that's imported from Uganda and Tanzania, from Uganda, is cheaper than Kenyans and is displacing Kenyans, one of the things that Kenya does is actually some of that is processed into other goods. So it's an intermediate good. So it's processed into, say, animal feed, and then re-exported. So the point is to make sure that markets work efficiently, as opposed to saying that, look, we should not buy tomatoes from somebody else. In the same way, people in Europe cannot say that, look, why are we buying from Kenyans tea, or why are we buying? The nature of trade is that you exploit the best prices that you can to produce greater value for your people.
Value addition.
Yes. So I think that there are two things we can read from the fact that if our maize and even sugar in the region are the most expensive, let's ask ourselves, is it that our production systems are uncompetitive? Is it our fertilizer? Because, for instance, the government gives a subsidy to fertilizer, but fertilizer in Kenya is still more expensive than other places. So somebody brings in fertilizer and it's still more expensive. We're supposed to have seed. So many of the problems that we see as imports from Uganda and Tanzania reflect inefficiencies that are domestic. So it's not to blame Ugandans and Tanzanians.
They're filling a gap.
They're filling a gap, precisely. And that is a signal to us, as my colleague BILLOW said, that is a signal to us that there's something broken about the way we produce things. So if we don't fix that domestically, you cannot tell Kenyan homes not to buy onions or not to buy tomatoes until Kenya can produce it at the price they can afford. So obviously, the good thing again about global, rather opening up, is that competition is a signal to you to actually, because farming is a business. If we start with farming is a business. So when you farm, you also need to reflect what the factor prices are. And if your signal is that you're producing a product that is more expensive than people are willing to pay for, and they're willing to get it from Uganda and Tanzania, then what that tells you is that maybe you need to change the way you produce, or actually you need to go to another crop. Because remember, the function of a common market and the function of a common market actually is that there's no such thing as Kenyan maize and Ugandan maize.
Maize is maize.
It actually comes East African. So basically it's grown in East Africa. So these are East African products. In the same way that when Kenyans export, say, margarine, which Kenyans export into the region all the way to Rwanda, that's East African product. That's the reason I talked about the rules, so that the rules say that, look, it is recognized as an East African product.
They don't care how much it used to produce, and it doesn't matter what the person next door produces.
Yes. Provided a consumer who has it on the shelf, who sees it on the shelf, is prepared to buy it, right, at the price for which it is provided. That's what the signal is for us. So I think we can't want to go into the East African community and say that our function in the East African community is simply to push goods into Uganda and Tanzania. But for us, we are not going to get any. Of course, it wouldn't work, because if everybody does that, then the community would cease to have. Its most important objectives would not be achieved.
But I think anyway, I could be from a layman point of view, moving from one crop to another might not be really effective, because if you're not competing with crop A, even if you go to crop B, then it means the same problems will still apply. I remember there was a conversation a couple of years ago in where I come from, Rift Valley. They were telling us to move away from maize to start planting avocados. But then again, Tanzanians are doing avocados in hundreds and hundreds of acres. Yes. In the next 5 years, we cannot compete still. So do we now move to start doing guava? Or going to the next thing. Anyway, allow me to digress and go to what some other the fans are saying. Mohammed Abdullahi Habdi says, ask KWAME to explain the effects of coalition of willing, that is Tanzania and Burundi, coalescing around their own interest. Very quickly before I go to my
Well, I think okay, so the reason we have the East African community, and one of the things that we've stressed this morning, is that rules are important. So all questions or all issues that arise are interpreted according to the rules. And the East African community is a very, very highly developed one. It has a court, it has a parliament of its own, it has a secretariat, and it has a summit. All these are institutions through which all these issues that arise are reflected. One of the other things that it allows is a concept called variable geometry, which allows countries that want to proceed with one form of reforms to go ahead and then to let the others catch up over time, because we might be at different levels. So I think what he's referring to is that Burundi and Tanzania had certain concerns about the pace at which the reforms were being carried out. And so Kenya, Rwanda, and Uganda at one point were more prepared for faster reforms than the others. So that's what raised the coalition of the willing on the one side against the other. So it wasn't, I think sometimes the press also played it politically in such a way that look, some other people were being kicked out or were being given the signals to do that. So that's why I say that diplomatic management is part of what is required to keep the EAC going. But within the rules allow for some countries to actually lead with some reforms if they are necessary and they're part of the agenda, and for the others to follow up over time.
So it's okay to coalesce around their common interest as they move forward. All right. Olemijil Slay and Difton says, ask BILLOW KERROW why the government imports maize, yet our farmers in Rift Valley and parts of Western Kenya are producing more than excess. I would like you to pick two. In the next 5 minutes, we'll just focus on what this guy is asking. And then Mark Chit us what are the pros and cons of getting vehicles in Uganda or Sudan. There seems to be, we talk about open borders. When it comes to also to assets, it becomes a bit difficult to move them in between the borders in the EAC. So maybe you pick that on the issues of maize, which I think we've really discussed as much, and also about the movement of assets within the EAC.
I think